Will there be a real-time calendar in GTA 5? Have we found the locations of where the characters will be diving for treasure? And will we see the return of the Grove Street gang from San Andreas? Hello, welcome to this week's GTA 5 O'Clock. I'm here with Dan Dawkins. How you doing, Dan?
Hello.
I'm Tim Weaver, and we are going to talk about the screenshots, Dan, that came out a couple of weeks ago, brilliantly timed for when I was on holiday. While you and James were talking about it, I was sitting on a sun lounger, obviously wondering, what was happening in the world of GTA.
Of course.
And I listened to what you guys were talking about when I got back. I listened to the episodes, and I thought there was some really interesting stuff there. While I was listening to it, I thought there were a couple of things I might have added. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give you 40, we've totaled it up, and we think it's 40 things you might not have spotted in the new batch of screenshots from GTA 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them, I think, Dan, and I'll tell you the bits and bobs that I thought I've seen that maybe you and James didn't spot, and then you've got some new stuff to add based on what you've been looking at and what the readers have been saying. Yeah,
basically, when we looked at the screenshots last time out 2 weeks ago, the shots arrived in our inbox at 1 PM. We just finished that week's episode, and we had to re-record the entire episode within an hour and rush it out. So we didn't really have time to analyse like we normally would do. And what's really nice now is, Tim's come back with some fresh thoughts, and we've also got all your feedback from the last episode, so hopefully we'll get a few of those good points in today.
Okay, before we go on, Dan, do you want to remind people about our Twitter account?
Yeah, follow us on @GTAV O'Clock. The community's heading up to 1,000 members already. Really great to get your questions and your feedback. We'll have all the latest news there and the latest links. And also, please don't forget to subscribe by clicking on screen now. And if you're feeling especially generous, like this video.
Yes. So let's kick it off then, Dan, with the... we're going to do them, I think they're in the order they are on Rockstar's GTA 5 site. And the first one on there is the picture of the screenshot of Santa Monica Pier with the lightning strike dramatically coming in. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago, you and James talked about weather and all that kind of stuff. I thought I might add a little bit of a flesh to the bones in terms of what we might expect on Santa Monica Pier, or as it's called in the game,
the Del Perro
Pier. So this at the back here, you can see two buildings. One's got like a sort of slightly slanted roof, the one nearest to us, and at the back, just behind it, there's a kind of grey-white building. That's actually if you go onto Google Maps, you can actually view Santa Monica Pier. You can go right up to the back of Santa Monica Pier. I don't know how they did it. But on Google in the States, in some of the cities they've mapped in the States, you can go into these, they're not necessarily roads and stuff. You can go into like these sort of tourist locations and that kind of thing. So you can go and see this for yourself. We should be seeing a picture actually of Santa Monica Pier that I grabbed from Google Maps at some point during the next couple of minutes. So it'll give you an even better idea. But those two buildings at the back are really, really closely aligned with how they look in real life. The one closest to us is a restaurant in real life. The one behind it is like a harbour, kind of like a harbour master's office. That's where you can go for first aid. That's where the lifeguards are stationed. And more relevantly, I suspect that's probably where you might pick up something like a speeder file. Something like there might be like a little vehicles around that you'll be able to go in. Probably not in the weather displayed in this screenshot at the moment, although I'm not doubting that you can go out in that weather. You can do anything you want, I guess, in GTA 5, but you'll probably be able to access vehicles there. And halfway down the pier, you can see the sort of in-game equivalent of Pacific Park, which is like the little fun fair that Santa Monica Pier's got on it. There's a Ferris wheel and some roller coasters. It's basically like the kind of regular fun fair. So yeah, that's all I've got to add on that, Dan, because you talked quite extensively about the weather last week. I don't know whether you've got...
Yeah, very little to add, apart from the fact that, yes, we haven't seen lightning before, and now we've seen it. Quite how it'll affect proceedings, we don't know. I sort of half joked that it might strike a plane last time out, but as a lot of people correctly said, there's a lot of incidences of lightning having hit planes, and effectively nothing happens because planes are quite good conductors of electricity, and nobody got fried to death. Also, Del Perro means the dog in Spanish, which is the name of the pier.
Oh, right. Interesting. One thing I did think looking at this was that it gives you a sort of intriguing... It makes it intriguing in that I wonder how far out into the sea you can actually go. Because we know they've mapped the ocean floor, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But once you're out kind of beyond Santa Monica Pier, you've got a lot of ocean. And I wonder how they kind of hem you in, you know, from like just continuing across the Pacific Ocean.
There has to come a point where you can't ride out to sea infinitely, you wouldn't have thought. Now, again, games have different solutions for this sort of thing. Now, whether you're actually going to be like the Truman Show, where you literally hit the environmental wall, I sincerely doubt. I mean, what I'd probably use is the sort of sense of an infinite wave, where the tide gets so great that you can't ride up against it. So it's like a sneaky version of an invisible wall. Otherwise, what some games do is sort of like force you to curve. So it sort of pushes you back around the radius of an imaginary circle. But I'm going with the infinite wave theory.
But we'll call that the infinite wave theory and move on. Next one, Dan. Sunset over Los Santos. You and James talked about construction last week and that kind of thing. I think you're going to talk about that in a second. What I will just add a couple of things here that I spotted when I came back from holiday and looked at these screenshots. If you lighten the screenshot by yourself, which is what I did earlier, you can see there's a little brownstone building down on the right-hand side here, right in the bottom corner. And on the side of it is a logo. Now, I tried to read what the logo said, and I wasn't very successful, but actually I'm starting to think that it might not be English, because the further out you get, the slightly clearer it gets. It looks like some sort of Far Eastern language, and having done a bit of research, I would say that it could be Korean, because right next to downtown, well, not right next to in real life Los Angeles, but nearby, is Koreatown. And I think, as I understand it, Koreatown is going to play a part in GTA 5, because I imagine we're going to get gangs coming out of Koreatown as part of the different, there's going to be all sorts of different gangs in the game as there are in the previous game. So it wouldn't surprise me if this was a shot of the very edges of Koreatown looking down towards downtown. Next to the brownstone building, just behind it, you can see like an overpass, which I would think is probably the Hollywood or Vinewood Freeway, or the in-game equivalent of that. And then just lastly, before I hand over to you, Dan, just sort of centre kind of right between the brownstone building and the centre of the picture is a... Yeah, I'm just sorry. I just had to lean in for a closer look. Is a little sign kind of coming up from a petrol station, which is a zero gas filling station. Zero gas, having appeared in some of the other games.
Oh, very good. Well, this screenshot could be symbolic of what we were calling like the real-time calendar theory of GTA 5. Now, it's not just us that have been thinking about this. A few of you have pointed this out in the comments. Just one of many comments. One is from Joe Klaus, who says, in the second photo with the lens flare and the construction building, you can see the progression of the city being built as you play. In some of the other screenshots, you see the building and the crane are not as built up, but in this screenshot, it seems like a lot of the work has been done. So as you progress in the game, is it that the city is being built sort of in front of your eyes? Now, this is, it's obviously hard to prove, but given that the game operates on a sort of fairly realistic 24-hour day-night cycle with realistic shifting weather patterns, and the fact that, like I say, pedestrians and other characters have got their own little life schedules and patterns, as we've talked about several times, with people going back and forth to their jobs. If you go there in the middle of the morning, they'll be in bed. If you go there, some other time, they'll be waiting on the bus stop, etc., etc. Could it be that they're building in this element of you see a city grow as you go with it? And what I think would be nice about that is it would be a nice backdrop to almost like a persistent multiplayer environment, so that if you're all like characters within a persistent world, your actions would be sort of consistently affecting it. I know that's an exceedingly difficult thing to create, probably on PlayStation 3, so maybe I'm overthinking and overreaching, but I do like the idea that this version of Los Santos you live in is ever evolving.
Yeah.
And that perhaps, and this would be a really interesting angle, perhaps at some stage, the building finally unlocks, inverted commas, by becoming a piece of DLC. So you see it built up to a point, and then you go, download the DLC tower. But it could be that you slowly see it edge towards reality.
So I wonder whether, are we to assume, and this would be us speculating, obviously, but are we to assume that this won't be the only the building we're seeing here is not going to be the only building to be is being constructed during the game? Presumably we think there'll be other buildings.
Yeah. If this, and this course, this is speculation, there would obviously be other buildings, and there would have to be other things within the environment that aged or showed the passage of time.
Yeah.
And again, time is a good measure of context, and it would allow you to echo some of the themes in the game. Rockstar have been unafraid to experiment with time, particularly in Red Dead, where they used it as a device to, spoiler alert, shunt you through a large period of time and create quite a dramatic effect.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that. But what if it is literally real time, you're not going to see a very dramatic change.
No. The other thing is that sort of skyscraper it's been like a central focus of so many of the screenshots that I wonder whether it will end up playing some bigger part in the story. Whether it's, I don't know. I don't know whether maybe the last mission ends up there, and I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, really, on the spot. But that it's become almost symbolic of GTA 5. This kind of building that's under construction the whole time. That same crane every single time in the same place. And it just makes me wonder whether like how in Spec Ops: The Line, for example.
Yeah.
You are constantly like working your way towards that tower. It's like in the distance the whole time, and
that's like Journey as well. Similar.
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah. Ultimately that's where your journey kind of ends, but it's like this spectre kind of looming over the game the whole time, and I just wonder whether that because it's such a dominant kind of figure on the landscape of Los Santos, and they've placed such a lot of weight behind making Los Santos, for want of a better expression, a living, breathing kind of real city, that I just wonder whether this building here might play some bigger part later on down the line.
Yeah, it's tempting and maybe ludicrous to suggest it's the metaphor building. And I was thinking just then, off the cuff, that imagine Rockstar are representing the state of the game's progress through the screenshots and the relative completion of this building.
Right, yeah,
that's probably nonsense, but it's quite fun. As if they were saying the game is as complete as this skyscraper is, and in the early screenshots, and there'd kind of be a sense to that. Like in the early screenshots, it wasn't very complete. I'm probably putting too much onto this.
Yeah, but I like the theory. Okay, so next screenshot was the one of, who did we decide that was? Michael? Or just some bloke?
I don't know, is my answer to that.
Okay, so some bloke, a.k.a. I think it might be Michael, is underwater. On first glance, doesn't seem a lot, and to be honest, on second glance, there still doesn't seem like a lot. But what it does give us an idea of, as you talked about a couple of weeks ago, Dan, is this kind of idea of the environment under the water being mapped. We can see there's wildlife and that sort of thing, and we know that off the coast of Los Angeles, off the coast of California, you've got all sorts of marine life, sharks, leopard sharks, sea lions, giant sea bass. And I'm just laughing at Dan trying to use my pen, which I accidentally snapped in half just a second ago.
It's like a joke pen.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
You write with it, and the entire nub disappears.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't work.
Yeah, there we go.
Sea lions, giant sea bass, great white sharks, all that sort of stuff. So we've seen sharks already, so we know that they're there. But what I'm sort of expanding this out, not necessarily something we see in this screenshot, but I was sort of thinking, I wonder what he's headed down there to do. Right now, presumably you'll be able to crack on a diving suit and go down and have a look around whenever you feel like it. I'm assuming, but we've speculated before on this show that that there may be some sort of treasure-based system, like maybe like even a heist involving them heading down under the water.
Yeah.
In one episode, you talked about the monolithic monuments of Mu.
Who could forget?
Oh, that classic episode. And we threw it out there, and it was some people received it well and some people not so well. But one thing I'd found out, having done a little bit of research, is that 22 miles off the coast of LA is an island called Santa Catalina. And the reason I know Santa Catalina is because I read a lot of books by a guy called Michael Connolly, who sets all his books in Los Angeles. And actually, one of our listeners mentioned him in one of the comment threads a couple of episodes ago, and talked about how his character had a sort of history of being in Vietnam in the tunnels and that sort of thing, and how there's like this huge tunnel system under LA, which is another discussion for another day, but I thought was a very interesting point. But anyway, I know Santa Catalina because he writes about it a lot, and I also know that off the sort of around Santa Catalina, there's actually a lot of shipwrecks.
Right.
Now, having looked into this, one thing that really struck me was that there was once a shipwreck, a boat called the Valiant, which is a 163-foot yacht, somehow exploded. There wasn't really a lot of detail. It exploded and sunk on December the 17th, 1930. But what was interesting was this. It apparently had $67,000 or $1 million in today's prices worth of jewels on board. And to this day, they've never been recovered. And I thought, what if Rockstar played on that kind of myth, that idea? Well, apparently it's not a myth. Apparently there literally are $1 million worth of jewels somewhere on that ship, and no diver's ever been able to find it. But what if they played on this kind of idea, this history, and the reason that the guys are down there is to try and recover a lot of jewels, $1 million, maybe 2 million, maybe 5 million, maybe who knows how many. They can do whatever they like. But I just thought it's a well-known story in that part of the world, and I thought it was quite an interesting idea.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think if you are going to, let's face it, diving in the ocean bed has the potential to be quite boring because there's limited amounts you can do down there. Look at pearls, fish, or sharks, and swim and breathe. And look at sharks and swim and breathe. And it could be boring. So I think the reason to do that schlep work would be to uncover a fantastical reward. So if you did like hours and hours of diving and it was a bit boring, but at the end of it, you leapt your way $67,000 better off effectively, that's amazing, because then you can go back into the world, buy an amazing sports car, or whatever Rockstar do to incentivise you earning money. And, that would be a fantastic way, because you'd be like, all right, I sweated for it, but I've earned this amazing reward in the real virtual world.
Yeah. And just lastly, another point, Santa Catalina is one of several islands which they call, ironically, the Channel Islands in that part of the world. And those islands have, over the years, over hundreds of years, been used for smuggling. So that's another, area that Rockstar may possibly explore. There might be this kind of lots of hidden treasure there. There might be things to find, things to discover. Maybe, just maybe, they'll create an island somewhere off the coast in a sort of echo of Santa Catalina. Maybe not as big as Santa Catalina, but maybe an island where you can, if you swim far enough out to sea, you might find this island. It's certainly not the sort of thing that Rockstar, it is the sort of thing that Rockstar are prone to do, is to have like these little things for you to find when you head off the beaten track.
Yeah.
Okay, next screenshot is the skydiving shot. Not an awful lot to add to what you and James talked about, other than that plane, I think, is an Andromeda or a GTA 5 version of it. I think a few people in the comments pointed out that the cargo door is open, and whether that's because the dude who's skydiving has just dropped out, or whether it's because it's somehow tied into the Trevor falling out in a Jeep thing. I don't know. I don't know whether you got anything to.
No, all I've got to add, and this is things people have told me to clarify, is I probably speculated that the skydiver was Franklin just because he's wearing a motorbike helmet, but in reality the man's got white hands, so it's more likely Michael or Trevor.
Okay, next screenshot. Franklin going crazy with a Jesse Ventura minigun. You guys talked a little bit about the fire. You weren't quite sure what it said on the sign. Immediately, I thought that says coroner, and I think eventually you decided that it did say coroner. Yeah. And actually, if you go into Google Maps, which I hope there's going to be a picture of it coming up on your screen now, you can see that this is actually the LA Coroner's Office.
Ah.
And that sign is pretty much an exact version of the one that you'll be seeing in Google Maps at the moment. And the building has been pretty much exactly replicated in game.
Oh, Tim, I feel that you struck cast iron gold here. I think we should have almost like an alarm that sounds when we say something that's good.
Bar.
Well, I was thinking more of playing a bit of the theme tune.
So you didn't like a makeshift alarm?
I just thought it was a bit terrifying. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So yeah, that's the LA Coroner's Office, Dan, and he's for whatever reason, Franklin's going mental with a minigun outside the Coroner's Office. The car is obviously a vapid cruiser, police vehicle, or at least it looks like a police vehicle. Certainly, it's vapid, and that would suggest it's a police vehicle. The Coroner's Office is interesting in real life LA because it's kind of like a perfect storm in terms of location. It's right next to the freeways, pretty close to Santa Monica, aka Del Perro Freeway. It's close to the LA Dodgers Stadium. Mm-hmm. It's close to the hospital, LA Medical Center. It's close to Union Station, and it's close to the LA storm drains. So if Franklin's going in there firing a minigun and destroying everything in sight and presumably wanting to get away, he's actually got quite a lot of options at his disposal once he gets out of the grounds of the coroner's office. He's got highways and storm drains and that sort of stuff. So it might give you a clue, this location, as to exactly what happens next. He may take his car into the storm drains in a Terminator 2 stylie. Final point, bandana on the face to disguise himself. We joked, I think, on the video that it wasn't a great disguise, but Red Dead used a sort of similar device, didn't it, where can you flip up your bandana to kind of disguise yourself?
Don't ask me because I played limited amounts of Red Dead, Tim.
I haven't finished Red Dead, so that's why I look a bit. But I'm sure the guys in the comments will.
Yeah, we're about to get massively corrected.
But that's why he may be wearing a bandana.
Well, to pick up on the bandana, someone's noticed, and in fact, this is Levi Prout, who said, "Will there be Grove Street?" And he says that because Franklin's wearing a green rag and greenish clothes. Now, these were kind of the distinctive colours of the Grove Street gang.
I had from saying that actually.
Not the Grove
in the
Street
intro.
Gang, who were a different set of people
they were
entirely.
From the other side of LA.
Yeah, the old gang bangers.
Yeah,
that is also something else entirely. Yeah, and it could be again that he's representing for Grove Street, which would be a nice nod to GTA San Andreas. It could just be he's wearing a green bandana. But there is something in a minute that does hint again at Grove Street that we'll get to. One other thing I wanted to say is attacking the coroners with a minigun. Is he mad? Everyone's dead already. It's like attacking a graveyard with a nuclear bomb.
What happens if they have to retrieve a body? Maybe there's some evidence on a body that would cost them their freedom. Maybe.
What about if it's like old games have told me to do, is that there'll be some high-tech heist they've got to do where you literally need a man's fingerprints.
Yeah, exactly. That is a good point, actually.
Yeah.
We joke about it, but that's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Could that actually be real? Like, could that work? Could
presumably.
The dead hand or a high-tech man?
Forensic klaxon. Right. Yeah. After you die, your skin starts sloughing off of your hands.
Yes,
right? Okay?
yes.
But not for a couple of weeks. So if you went in quick, went into that coroner's office like 2 days later, chopped off the hand, you could presumably still use it for fingerprints.
So the sell-by date for a dismembered hand is about 3 weeks on from its.
Well, the sell-by date for a body in general is unless it's been embalmed, is a week, really, week to 2 weeks.
Okay.
So interesting forensic fact there for you, Dan. Now let's move on. The next shot, the helicopter kind of flying over LA. We see downtown in the background. We can see Cars kind of under the spotlight here. You guys, I don't think were quite sure what that car was, but as people pointed out in the comments, and I'm going to point out now, the lime green car there is an Infernus, the in-game equivalent of the Lamborghini. What you guys didn't spot last week, Dan, was that this building here on the sort of centre right middle, if that makes any sense, is the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh, well, that's my only thing I've got to say to him.
Oh, have I spoiled your...
No, it's good, it's good.
Immediately, when you didn't talk about it, I was screaming at the screen saying, mention the Hollywood Bowl.
Idiots.
Hollywood Bowl's where they lay on concerts and that kind of thing. And if we've got things right, you should be seeing a Google Maps version, real-life version of the Hollywood Bowl now. And you can get an idea of what it looks like. And again, how accurately Rockstar have reinterpreted that for the game. It really is pretty close. Second point on this: the fact that they're coming down this kind of stretch of road here. It doesn't look like a freeway. So actually, my notes here have landed me in a bit of dwang, because I put it looks like the Hollywood Freeway, but actually on closer inspection that doesn't look like a freeway. But the Hollywood Freeway, Hollywood Freeway is pretty close to the Hollywood Bowl in real life. So presumably there is a is that a freeway on the left there? Maybe. Anyway, a freeway is pretty close to the Hollywood Bowl. So maybe they're not doing anything at the Hollywood Bowl, or maybe they're heading in there. I don't know. But the freeway somewhere there. Another interesting point is, and this joins up with screenshots that we've already seen released, is that just out of the picture, kind of over this, on the right hand side, just over the brow of that hill next to the Hollywood Bowl, will be somewhere the Griffith Observatory. Ah, yes. Because just next to the Hollywood Bowl in real life is the Hollywood Reservoir. And if you remember that shot of Michael and... was it Michael and Franklin or Michael and Trevor? I can't remember now. Kind of looking out over the city from Griffiths Observatory. Remember that one? On the left-hand side, there is the Hollywood Reservoir, just on the left-hand side of that shot. So it suggests that as we look at this picture now, we're seeing the Hollywood Bowl. Just over the brow of this hill on the right is the Hollywood Reservoir. And just to the right of that is the lookout point where Michael and Trevor... or Franklin, I can't remember off the top of my head, are looking out over the city.
The Hollywood Reservoir is the backdrop to the GTA 5 o'clock Twitter account.
Right, yeah, okay.
That's not even a dead. That's just a thing we did.
Final, slightly less interesting point, perhaps, is that you see that building kind of in the centre with the... it's got like a sort of pink neon sign at the top of it.
Slightly shorter than the others.
Yeah. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what that pink sign might be, but I went back over every single brand,
man alive,
that was featured in GTA 4, and the nearest to that sign that I could figure out from GTA 4, and this is only GTA 4. I had time to go over any of the other games, but of course we know that brands kind of segue through from one game to another. Is the Triangle Club, which you might remember, Dan, as being a strip club in GTA 4, or the Split Sides Comedy Club, which also uses a kind of pink logo with a sort of funny sort of Marx Brother kind of nose and glasses at the bottom of its logo. Or it might not be either of those. It might just be the name of an apartment building. If anyone else out there's got any ideas, do give us a shout.
Yeah, last quick thing to note, Police Chopper's got a spotlight, obviously picking out the car. Something a few people in the comments picked up on was the possibility of, could you shoot out the spotlight so that, as a result, the chopper couldn't see you properly. Now, that got me thinking that what if one way to alleviate your wanted level throughout the game was to shoot out the police's means of tracking you? Now, this might tie back to what we've talked about several times about CCTV cameras. Now, what if, whilst your wanted level is high, it's kept high because you're constantly being monitored by CCTV or by spotlights? If you were to remove that form of surveillance, would you then drop your wanted level because the police can no longer track you?
Yeah, that would certainly be that would be a good way, rather than trying to find somewhere to hide or a pay and spray in an old-fashioned style.
Suddenly in a new car.
Yeah, suddenly in a red car.
Yeah.
Okay, next screenshot is this kind of sort of location shot. I think you and James speculated that in the background that might be the Salton Sea area. I've got nothing to dispute that, really. The only thing I'd say is that in LA, the real LA, there's not actually a river that runs from LA out to the Salton Sea, as far as I can tell. The river in LA runs from Long Beach in the south. It's kind of north across the city towards the sort of foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains. And that river, in inverted commas, is at times the storm drains that we know aren't always full of water anyway. So they've either made up a river that runs from Los Santos to where Trevor lives in this kind of Salton Sea area, which I doubt, because they've remained very, very faithful to the geography and the locations in LA, or they've slightly switched the kind of location of the real Salton Sea, which is sort of, I think, southeast of LA, and they've kind of brought it up around kind of to the sort of northeastish, north kind of side of the city. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but it does again show the kind of very compressed geography of the city. And although they've been very, very faithful to all these locations, and once again, we could look at this and it looks absolutely stunning, we can see that they've really had to kind of compress that geography.
Yeah, I mean, I've nothing to add. I'll willfully munch a wrong sandwich if I've got the Salton Sea bit incorrect. But what these shots, and a few of them echo, is they've all got themes of like country and natural beauty and weather. Weather, again, is all feeding into that theory about the game having an Instagram style photo sharing service, because a lot of these shots are like, if you were a real life nature photographer, getting in position to take these shots would be quite a challenge. Now, if a game within the game was positioning yourself into positions of natural beauty and having your shots ranked online or against other people's shots of natural beauty, that would be a really fun way to, if you're going to go to the effort of building this incredible, rich, beautiful world, why not get people to celebrate it by taking photos and having them ranked and rated?
How about this, Dan? You strap on a parachute, you head up in your plane, and you do it solely to try and land on the top of one of the game's mountains.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be, even to take photos while skydiving would be amazing if you could do stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
But maybe, that might give you more incentive to sort of head up into the clouds, into these planes, rather than just going to steal money or jump out the back of a plane and trying to chase a Jeep.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, next screenshot is Trevor on a bike being chased by shadow men. You and James seemed a bit undecided. I think you decided that they probably weren't law enforcement people, but they were people chasing Trevor. But I actually disagree. I think they probably are law enforcement people, and I'll tell you why, Dan.
Tell me for why, Tim.
Okay.
So I take another bite of wrong sandwich.
I think it's because that is a way that real life law enforcement people sometimes do ride their vehicles, believe it or not. Okay, they've got like on these big sort of SUVs.
They should sit inside the car. Tim.
I know, it would be handy. But I think on these big SUVs they have those kind of like platforms. Do you know what I mean? Like, but along the side of the cars, and that's one of the reasons why they use it like that. But if you look behind them, there's two guys, one either side on the vehicle at the back there. And I just think that it's likely, and I could be the one eating the wrong sandwich here, Dan, but I think it's likely that's FIB. I don't have any more evidence really to back that up, other than I just think that would be a very sort of telltale FIB stroke FBI way of riding a vehicle. Two other things, two other quick points. Number one, I think the bike Trevor's riding is a Demon. Which you would have seen in. I think it was in. I don't think it was in GTA 4. I think it was in Lost and the Damned. Yeah. And just a quick other point about his helmet. I think in GTA 5, presumably they'll do what they did in Ballad of Gay Tony, where if you give them enough time, they'll kind of whack on a helmet, and then before, when you steal a bike, get on the bike or whatever. But I read today that, and I didn't know whether you know this, Dan, it's a really small point, but some mission-specific characters will wear helmets that you won't see anywhere else in the game. But I'm guessing you can probably unlock those helmets. I don't know, maybe. That's a tiny throwaway point. That's all I've got to add on that screenshot.
Well, yeah, some people seem to be split on whether it's FIB, SWAT. Some people suggested it was the Noose unit from GTA 4. Someone else had said, is the reason they're blacked out, like we talked about this in the last episode, of why is it so overshadowed, like the guy where you can't see his identity. Now, someone suggested because it is in fact an organised gang, and if we could see their identity, it would give away the fact that they're in the game. I don't know. And in fact, another person said, apparently, I don't know, he didn't cite his source, he said there's an official caption for the last screenshot that says, Trevor outruns SWAT on a motorcycle.
Right.
But I will say, I haven't seen that caption myself, if that's the case, whether it's on the Rockstar Newswire or some other source, but I haven't seen it. But yeah, nothing more to add.
Okay, next screenshot was the one you talked about possibly being an example of an Instagram-style option somewhere in GTA 4. I think that's probably... I thought while I was listening to it, I was nodding in agreement, because I think that's a really good shout. I've got two tiny things to add to this. I think the vehicle is a Super GT, or at least it looks like it. It certainly looks similar to the shape of the GTA 4 version. But I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments if I'm wrong.
Internet folk say it's the Ocelot F620.
Oh, right, okay.
From the Ballad of Gay Tony.
Right, okay, fair enough then. I've got that. I shouted that one wrong. I thought it looked like a Super GT. But and then in the background we can see the Sangorginio Pass wind farm, which I think I've talked about in previous episodes, and we saw, I think, right up front in the first trailer, or was it the second one? First
trailer, yeah.
And if you on screen now, you should probably be seeing a Google Maps version of the real life version of it, which is, I think, as I said before, in real life on the freeway between Los Angeles and Salton Sea. Any more down there?
Just a broader point to make. Rockstar officially commented on the Newswire, just to clarify. They said, to all those who are asking, these screens are from the current generation of consoles. Now, that in itself is interesting, because they obviously feel the need to address that people are rumouring, are these PS4 shots, whatever it is. But I don't know, it's almost like, well, if there was no sense of them ever going to another platform, of course they'd just be on PS3, because that's all they've announced. And then just like tacitly saying, maybe it's not. I don't know. But
what do you think is like a sort of roundabout way of saying?
Well, they're saying like these are the current gen screens, as opposed to what, like why would they even clarify that if it was only on PS3 anyway? Of course they.
What was their? Do you know what their exact kind of?
Well, it says these screens are from the current generation of consoles.
Right.
So I mean, maybe it's looking for things that aren't there.
The fidelity in them just seems redonkulous for the current gen. I mean, I know that developers are cranking out a lot from this, from the consoles now. But I mean, like if you zip back to that coroner's office one, look, you got like individual brickwork there. You got this sort of propagating fire. You got presumably Franklin blamming through the car park with a minigun. You got bullet casings firing out.
I
the
know.
back of
it just looks too good to be true for PS3, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
It does look. So I can see why people are questioning it, but I guess you have to take Rockstar at their word. If they say
massively,
if they say it's current gen, then it's current gen.
And something to make clear, and people get confused in the comments, we are not saying and have never said that GTA 5 is not coming out on PS3 and 360. Of course it's coming out on PS3 and 360. There's no conspiracy in terms of it secretly only being on PS4 or the next Xbox. All we've speculated is it may at some stage come out on PC, PS4 and the next Xbox, after it's come out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. So
perhaps to tie into the PC version.
Yeah,
speculated
exactly, and it's all in previous episodes, but I don't want people to get the wrong idea there. It's an interesting theory from a guy called Hung Rich Kid, must be his handle, and he says,
Great name.
He says, I think the stylized photos are part of character switching. He says they need to have some sort of scene establishing cutscene. So you'd pop into Michael and the camera might drop low and sort of flash or turn into sepia or something. So his suggestion is essentially that this is a device. So that say you suddenly popped into Michael's life and he was driving along the freeway. During the moment of transition, the camera might decolour or change. Which I like as a theory.
That's a good theory, yeah.
But the only thing is, there would have been people at certainly Game Informer and a few others who'd have seen the game running and probably could say this is cast iron. But because I've not seen the game firsthand yet, I couldn't say whether that's true or not.
Okay, last screenshot is Michael on the hood of a car. Terrible shoes, Michael. I just want to point that out. They look like cheap knockoff jobs.
Ooh,
don't like
that
them.
girlfriend.
I like his suit. Suit looks nice, and Rockstar do generally clothe their characters beautifully. Like the seamstressmanship in is that a word? I don't know. In Red Dead was beautiful, and I'm sure the guys in GTA 5 will again be nicely dressed, but bad shoes. Anyway, last week or a couple of weeks ago, point one, you two didn't seem too sure what it said in the background. I think that pretty obviously says warehouse, I would say, on the label at the back. That would make sense, perhaps, because close to the coroner's office, and you and James talked about how the brickwork on this building on the left is the same as on the coroner's office. Yeah. Close to the coroner's office in real-life LA is the warehouse district, Dan. A.K.A. Here goes the klaxon again. It's the warehouse district, a.k.a. I think it's called the wholesale district now.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of warehouses, a lot of industry, that kind of thing. We see boxes kind of sitting around outside buildings here, and we can see the security camera, which you talked about a couple of weeks ago, may have other purposes, but would also double up as a way to spot intruders and thieves and that kind of stuff. So I think it's... I'd be willing to bet a very tiny amount of money that is probably part of the warehouse district there. Final point is just on the right there. We can see an overpass. Could be a freeway because a freeway is very close to the warehouse district, and kind of in that part of LA there are a lot of freeways kind of crossing over and crisscrossing and stuff. And I think that I think I'm right in saying, I'm sure people will correct me, that I think only 3 freeways have been announced for GTA 5 so far, and maybe that's all there'll be, I don't know. But I would say that in the real life LA there's, I don't know, a lot more than 3. So it could be that next to it is a freeway there.
Yeah, that's interesting because of that bridge. Some people have picked up on the fact that it looks very similar to the bridge that went above Grove Street in San Andreas. Now, I don't know geographically, given what you've just said, that sounded very accurate, whether that would match up with where we think Grove Street is.
Isn't East LA adjacent to downtown, or it's near downtown? I don't know. I might have just made that up, and we haven't got an internet connection here where I can. Well,
let's blunder no further and leave that to you to research for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's quite possible. Something I meant to mention earlier, because there was a series of really excellent posts on going through each screenshot systemically by Candy Sophie 1984. She's sort of added comments on all of these, and in fact, there's another good comment as well from, I can't even say his name because essentially it's a swear word.
Oh no!
His name is Michael Hunt. So you could abbreviate that to make it as rude as you want. And he notes that when we talked about surveillance cameras, he says they had something like the surveillance cameras in Sleeping Dogs, where you could make an arrest purely using the surveillance cameras, like we can see in that shot.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and something that's been in another game. And that's all I've got to add.
Okay, so before we go, we're just going to answer. We promised last week. Well, I think you promised last week, Dan, that we'd answer some questions. So I've got a few questions here, Dan, which I'm going to throw at you, and you can attempt to answer. How's that sound?
Brilliant.
Pretty awesome.
What can go wrong?
Okay, first question is from First Drive. He says, my question is that due to GTA 5 using smartphones, do you think Rockstar could or will implement a feature where your smartphone in the game communicates with your smartphone in real life? You tell the game your email phone number and get texts and emails from characters asking you to be in certain places at certain times. That would really immerse you in the GTA world and blur the line between the real world and the GTA world. It could be done with a GTA 5 app. What do you think?
Yep, I like it. And I say that not as like in an idle, that would be nice kind of way. I think that increasingly, in terms of all games, this is going to be a trend, certainly as we approach the next generation. We're seeing it with games like Watch Dogs, Ubisoft's game that's going to be on the next gen and currently this gen, where the game talks to an iPad app in real time. Now, again, from when I've met people like Hideo Kojima, he's really interested in the way that mobile phone and tablet can interact with core console games. And, Sony will be doing the same with Vita and various other things. So I think this kind of seamless transition, as we've seen in games like Mass Effect 3, where you could do the very basic squad-based game in order to accrue war points. This is a theme that's here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think someone like Rockstar have got a world that's brilliant for exploiting something like that. And again, like I just talked about, the idea of sharing photos on your iPhone in an Instagram style, well, you do that on your phone anyway, so why not literally build it in with Rockstar's game? And I think that's a really interesting point. Now, we'll see whether it comes to fruition, but it must have crossed their minds.
Okay, second question from Christian Tarver. Do you think you'll be able to download apps for your iFruit phone?
I don't know. Again...
Okay, next question. No.
Again, it makes perfect sense. Quite what they'd be and how extensive it would be. It might be that they're scared to open that can of worms, because if they have an in-game app store of 6 apps, it's going to look slightly rubbish.
Yeah.
They can't have infinite apps. Who knows? You might at certain points in the game have to download one for a mission or something.
It's not outside the realms of possibility, though, that you could download a map application or I'm trying to think of other useful utilities, but I can't think of a single one. So, anyway, next question. Oliver Devereaux says, will the 3 characters have different weapons?
Well, if they pick them up, yes. I don't know if he means they'll have different specialties.
Yeah, I think, will they have specialties? Yeah, I think is what he means.
Well, they've talked about the characters having different skills and vehicles, and maybe that will play out. Again, we don't know, whether they'll be like San Andreas, let you power up the character to an extent or change their physique. I don't know if they're going to go on that level. It's not Skyrim, as far as we know. I'm not sure. I don't think they want to make it so that if you were one character, it was rubbish. I think they'd want to keep the experience fairly interchangeable. But
it's not outside the sort of, I keep saying realms of possibility. I must stop saying that. It's not outside the blah of blah that the characters may have that sort of old-fashioned sort of gamey kind of thing where each one has, for example, in order to complete a heist, Michael has to crack you inside, Trevor has to use the explosives, and Franklin has to or whatever, and maybe they might have that. Whether that comes down to something as specific as weapons, I guess we'll have to sort of wait and see.
It's something we touched on in one of the previous episodes where we said that multiplayer might comprise of you assembling a crack unit for a heist, and one of you might play a specialist getaway driver, one of you might be the sniper guy. But I'd have thought that's more based on your actual skill levels at manipulating the controls, as opposed to something hard coded into stats. I might be proved wrong. And in fact, multiplayer, looking certainly at Max Payne and the accrual of XP, I don't know is the answer. Maybe. It would be an interesting dynamic.
Okay, KS Live says, does anyone think they will include dogs in multiplayer that you can call to hunt down the enemy? It's an interesting idea. What was that game, Dan, that where you had that dog that was you could send off to do... People are probably shouting now what that game is. I can't remember.
Oh, the police one.
Yeah. You know the one I mean, anyway.
Tell us in the comments. It's embarrassing. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you could, and it's sort of almost like the Shinobi dog, but not quite. You send him off to do stuff.
Because why include the dog if he can't do anything?
We must have some role. Again, I don't know.
Don't call him a Doberman again.
No, that will cause
Damn right we
absolute outroar. He's clearly a poodle.
Yeah. Final question. The Riser17 says, do you think that the characters... this is a bit of a throwaway question, which I thought was fun. Do you think that the characters will play tennis like, say, Roger Federer, or will they be rubbish and hit it out of the court all the time? I guess what he means is, do you think you will become better at stuff as you put in more practice? In a sort of... Remember in San Andreas, they had to go down the Drim?
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty clear on the fact that they're not going to have any of that sort of stuff. But I wonder if, you know, like you can improve at tennis at... the other mini games.
I doubt it. I don't think. I think that you'll improve again, like by virtue of playing it and understanding the mechanics better. But I think you'd be like technically as capable as being as good at it at the start as you will be at the end. It's just your skills at using the controls improve, as opposed to, my God, Michael's got a mean forearm. Or, you know, when you play as Franklin, always use the backhand pass.
But Michael's got a tennis court in his house, hasn't he?
Well, you'd expect him to be better.
I reckon he'd be pretty good at tennis.
That would be ridiculous. That would be utterly ridiculous.
Okay, so that's 40 things. We didn't break them down into individual points, but I promise you there are 40 things that we talked about today that you didn't see, or perhaps did see, but hopefully some of the stuff you didn't see in the screenshots that got released a couple of weeks ago. We hope you've enjoyed listening to the show. Dan, remind us what that Twitter account is again?
Yeah, at GTAV O'Clock. Please join on board. 1,000 odd followers anytime now, getting bigger and bigger. Thank you as well for making us the biggest... I think we were the biggest GTA show on YouTube. If you type in GTAV, GTA 5, we're popping up at the top, and that's thanks to your support and your likes and your subscriptions. Please, 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 if you like what we do, please follow that. I don't want to blow our trumpet too hard because God knows we've got things wrong, but I will add, I watched the analysis shows on some major websites recently, and I'm going to be bold enough to say they blew some arse. They weren't good at all. So, yeah, that's probably the death knell and people telling me we get it wrong all the time. But just want to say thanks so much for your support. Please subscribe, please like, all those things.
We may get some stuff wrong, Dan, but we get a hell of a lot of stuff sort of semi-right. We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Remember, subscribe, do comment below. We'll attempt to answer some more of your questions next week if we get some good ones. Until then, we'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.